I can hear something calling. It's calling me every day. If taking a chance is a crime, then I've got hell to pay. I've been walking the streets in my mind, trying to find a new day. Keep on searching until I will find, until I find a new way. I'm gonna say something, I hope you don't mind. It's time to rearrange. I walk round in circles, I'm going nowhere. It's time to make a change.
Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. I am your host, Charles Wallace, and welcome to the Bare Essentials podcast. As we continue on our journey to build a stronger community, I'm very excited to share with you all the Kindness Alliance, which is a unique free of charge advertising initiative looking to support businesses that share in our core values. Each episode will look to spotlight a different member, celebrating their contributions and dedication to kindness. Would you like to get involved? Just visit the Kindness Alliance section on our website, www.thebareessentialspodcast.com, or just send me a message. And now, a huge thank you to this week's Kindness Alliance member.
Welcome to Family Farms, where our culinary journey is woven with passion, dedication, and a commitment to crafting the finest bacon-wrapped chicken, a timeless delicacy that has tantalized the taste buds since 1974. At Family Farms, we're more than just a traditional name. We've evolved into purveyors of gourmet delights. Join us on this flavorful adventure, where every bite tells a story of tradition, quality, and the enduring spirit of Family Farms.
Mike, how's it going, man? Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it.
It is a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. When I came across you, I was really intrigued by some of the things you got going on, and I was very happy when you agreed to do this because I think the audience will get a lot out of it. You're definitely an interesting individual, man, and I think doing some really cool stuff. So on that note, would you mind introducing yourself?
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Mike Corey. I have a YouTube channel called Fearless and Far. It's also an online brand. It's adventure travel. It's self-empowerment. It's helping people live a bold, adventurous life, mostly through travel and fighting fears and limiting beliefs. And it started with a YouTube channel. Now it grew into a TV show. I did 2 years of a TV show called Uncharted Adventure. Just got an Emmy for best outstanding daytime host for that show last year. And now have a podcast called Against the Odds, but really the bread and butter, the main thing is the YouTube channel, which is Fearless and Far. Yeah, the brand.
Well, really, really, really awesome stuff. And congrats on the Emmy. That's super awesome, man. Really, really happy for you on that one. So as I was doing a little bit of research on you, your personal journey, so interesting to me. So maybe we get into this to start off. How'd you transition from studying marine biology to becoming, an adventure host and a content creator?
I always loved the world, man. In the beginning, I didn't even really know what my path was going to be. I just knew that I loved animals. I grew up in the east coast of Canada, a small province called New Brunswick, which is right above Maine, if people are more familiar with the States. And there it's all about woods and water. We've got one of the highest tides in the world in the Bay of Fundy. So with that, there's tide pools and the coast gets carved by the ocean. And it's just like a really beautiful and rugged and real place. There's no fancy beaches. It's not really a postcard necessarily. It's just cold water, rocks, and pine trees. But with that, the forest is fairly friendly. There's a couple big animals out there, but generally there's nothing too much to worry about. So you can tramp around the woods with your make-believe stick sword and become a conqueror of the forest. And that's what I did with my siblings for a long time. And from there, we all grew up loving animals, deep appreciation for the creepy crawlies, especially. When I was young, my father used to lift up rocks in the tide pools and show me the copepods and the amphipods and all these little crustaceans and critters that most people would think would be gross or icky or slimy. I was always shown how fascinating the it's called The Misunderstood World Could Be. And that just went forward. So the animals got bigger once I started to travel a bit, and I did marine biology in university, also focused on zoology. And then from there, the focus on the misunderstood creatures kind of became a focus on misunderstood countries and people and cultures and foods. And so from there, the evolution of Fearless and Far came from a deep curiosity of things that people just decide to dismiss, that they throw around words like gross and weird, and they don't care to understand how it is. And for me, I learned very early on that, again, a lot of these creepy crawlies, especially in the ocean, weren't so disgusting after all. There's always something to be interested in, and a lot of these things we dismiss are very fascinating. The world's very similar. We call countries dangerous, or cultures and food weird, when really it's just a whole different understanding. And once you understand how and why and who do these things, and the whole tapestry is woven about how it became to be, the world's a really fascinating place. And so I dove into telling these stories of how the world can be so interesting. And fell in love with it, man. The world never ceases to surprise me, and often things that seem like they could only be fiction are actually fact.
Yeah, you know what I love, man? Just in that brief thing you just did there about that, your open-mindedness. I think that's really, really important. And I think it comes out in droves just in that little segment there. It's funny, I was having this conversation the other day with someone about how our own culture, I'm sure there's a lot of people around the world that think what we do or what we have is weird. So it's all about understanding. So I think it's a great way to look at it. And I think what you're doing is really opening up a lot of eyes. So that's a really, really cool thing, man. When you were doing your intro and some of the things I've seen online with you, something that I really enjoy too about facing our fears. What was the most significant fear you've conquered, and how did that change you, Mike?
I think fear is very misunderstood, because we think it's just, the fear of heights, or the fear of swimming, or dogs, or snakes or something, right? And that's a very vivid fear. And we might have like a phobia of public speaking, for example, and it's very easy to discern where that is, where the boundaries are. And if I don't live my life past that boundary, I feel pretty safe, unless it throws itself against me. But I guess I realized over the years that a lot of the fear we deal with is let's call it a quiet fear, one that doesn't yell as loud as like a phobia of public speaking would. And that subtly controls our actions in real life. And that can manifest itself as like fear of being alone, jealousy, anger. This is all just fears, like these things that these discomforts that are more delicately woven into our mind, opposed to these vivid ones. But it all started for me it was this quest in the beginning of, maybe everything I'm told about the world isn't actually how it is. Because people told me snakes were slimy and that bugs were icky. And lo and behold, once you learn about these things, a lot of that is false, And there's a famous example that I've told a few times, where I had a teacher in grade 3 who told me that snakes were poisonous and that we can't eat them. Because I asked him, well, why don't we eat snakes? Oh, well, snakes are poisonous. And that seemed logical, right? Until you learn a bit more about adults, and that adults really aren't as smart as we think they are as kids. And also, snakes aren't poisonous, they're venomous. And you could technically drink snake venom and you would not get sick, because it's just a protein. If the protein gets in your blood, then you're screwed, right? Because then you have all sorts of ailments depending on what kind of toxin it is. But you can eat a whole snake, including the venom, and still be fine, unless maybe you have an ulcer, right? But even then, snake meat's still fine. It's not poisonous. Poisonous and venomous are two very different things. But that realization when I was really, really young was that, okay, so what I'm being told about the world isn't true after all. And maybe I should go out and find my own answers. And getting back to the point of it all, I had a phobia of public speaking due to some childhood bullshit in the playground, where the whole school hated me for like half a year because I was framed for a crime I didn't commit. Sucks. That's just how it is sometimes. But I wasn't a big fan of being in the spotlight, as you can imagine. And nor is the introduction of public speaking in the school system gentle at all. Here's a topic, go in front of the class, here's a grade. That's there's no easing into it. There's not exactly a confidence building exercise involved in that. If anything, it's the opposite. So for me, I didn't ever want to be in the spotlight. It was the last thing I wanted to be. But here I am with, again, a huge YouTube channel, TV show, and podcast. But really, that winning that Emmy like a year ago or whatever it was a cool trophy of accomplishment for a good season of television and a good hosting ability. But for me, it was the universe saying, you've graduated. You've took the thing that you were most afraid to do, the thing that you were probably the worst at out of anybody you ever met. It was not a fun experience for me. And then got the international award for doing it best. And I felt it was the universe saying, now you are fully able to help people with whatever bullshit they go through, because you know what it feels like to go from zero to hero in that particular aspect of life, which is fear. Again, we all have different fears. We've all gone through different traumas. Some you could say are worse than others, but at the end of the day, you still feel it as vividly. Like the worst thing that ever happened to you is still always the worst thing that ever happened to you, right? We all live different lives, but it's not fair for you to diminish or accentuate your trauma over others, because again, we all sort of feel it the same. Not diminishing people who've gone through horrible shit, man. That's not fun, and that's obviously terrible. But again, one thing is you shouldn't downplay yours either. So for me, it was a massive gestures for me to be able to continue to help people with that feeling that controls all of our lives, by the way. And it's not, again, the vivid, oh, I'm scared of spiders. That's an easy one to figure out as it's powerful, right? But again, like jealousy, inadequacy, procrastination, perfectionism. This is all still fear, bro. We give it all these fancy names, but ultimately it's just the more subtle, the subtle programs playing in the background that all derives from some trauma when you were younger that now you internalize to do this. It's really fascinating, and I just love in my life when I find something that I'm like strangely resentful over, or I have like a very strong opinion over, and I'm like, why do I hate that so much? And I trace back through like a journal. I'm like, oh shit, actually that happened when I was like 9. I forgot all about that. And that makes perfect sense to why I have this irrational feeling, fear, attachment, you pick it to something that seems irrelevant. But man, it's amazing that the human brain is like a fucking steel trap, bro. Like it takes everything and just locks it in, and then you grow up and the monster under the bed changes a little bit, sure, but it's still there. It's still there.
Man, I love that answer. I don't know if I was expecting that answer. I obviously with what you do, places you've been, I was maybe expecting something else, but I love that was the answer and that you went into it. And you're so right about just the whole what our brain locks away. I actually have told some people there's sometimes where I feel like I just have to go back into those dark places sometimes and let them know I'm home and that it's my house.
Dude, you gotta kick that little kid down the stairs sometimes, right? Because everyone's got a basement, and if you don't acknowledge that there's someone in the basement trying to get upstairs and all you hear is the howling, you think you've got a ghost in your house. You have to acknowledge that little kid inside of you, and then when they start to open the basement door, you got to kick them in the chest and put them back down there and say, I hear you. I mean, maybe you can be a bit more empathetic, but yeah. I hear you, I see you, but I got this. Like, I don't need your input anymore, And I guess so the YouTube channel started with tackling all sorts of fears, right? Big ones, like I've done all sorts of things, man, like skydiving and solo camping and haunted castles and abandoned places and hunting fucking baboons and shit. Like, we do a lot of awesome stuff on the channel. And the name of the channel is Fearless. But at the same time, I've learned that the scariest things out there aren't out there, man. usually in your head, right? That's where a lot of the adventuring and fear fighting can be done is in your own head, because you don't have to leave your bedroom for an adventure, man. If you sort of want to dive into your past a little bit, and that stuff will shake you up more than getting shot at Satan's castle. Something that happened to me a couple of years ago, solo camping in Turkey. Some dudes came in the middle of the night with guns and started shooting lead at me, man.
Oh,
And that's all fine. Like, again, the world's a kind place. It's just filled with misunderstandings. Like for me, I do a lot of strange things that tourists don't normally do. And, it's like a fuck around and find out attitude, where it's like, if you're doing weird things that people don't normally do, you're going to get weird responses from other people or universes. And if you have good intentions, everything's fine. But people, like, again, if you don't speak the language, or it's misinterpreted, or again, you're sleeping at a place and you can't communicate, and they assume you're trying to steal the princess's treasure, and they chase you with guns, like, do you go have a conversation and say, excuse me, boys, this is a misunderstanding, I'm just a YouTuber, or do you run for the hills, right? So anyway.
Yeah, what a segue, because my next question was going to be, what's your most memorable adventure?
Yeah, well, that was one of them for sure. I guess I'm just always on the quest to find something new, like a new challenge, a new way to live on my edge. I'm not trying to find things that are dangerous per se. A lot of people say I do a lot of dangerous activities. I don't think so. I take everything very seriously. Like, the team is generally myself, my videographer Ben, a couple others we pick up around where we are, but like, we do risk assessments, we think about things that can go wrong, we do a lot of planning, make sure we have great local contacts, all of this. And so with that in mind, we open ourselves up to all sorts of opportunities. Like, I've got a big YouTube channel, and back in the days, it used to be like, roll up with a camera in your hand, make a vlog, right? But these days, with people who like getting paid, like, Africa trips are expensive, man. You think like Africa would be cheap, but to do things on, let's say, like a Western agenda, or like a Western attitude, which is like, we do this on time, we leave on time, we sleep here, we charge our gear. It costs a lot. So with that, you can't really just roll up and hope you have a perfect thumbnail, right? Which is one of the most important things that you can do in YouTube that everyone overlooks. And make sure you have the story and you have the real experience, because it's very easy to go someplace and be like, all right, we're in Kenya, let's visit the Maasai, the guys who have the sticks and the red robes, and they have cattle. If you just say, I want to see the Maasai, they're going to take you 30 minutes from town to the same Maasai village that they get tours all day. You have like a 1 hour human zoo experience, and then you leave and they beg you for more money. Like, it's not the real deal. If you want the real deal, you got to make a lot of planning, or at least have a lot of time to be able to ask the right questions. So back to your question, we've had some really awesome and authentic experiences in Africa. One in particular that just came to mind right now was, we were in Angola, like about a year ago now too. And we went to this beach that was called Shipwreck Beach, where to a lot of these guys with old like shipping container ships, I guess it's kind of like this. If you have a skyscraper in downtown London or Toronto or New York, and it's defunct, you can't, like, what do you do with it? Like, you can't just dismantle it. It costs money to destroy it. You know what I mean? Like, if you don't have money, like, you go to business, how do you destroy it? It costs money to destroy it. So it just kind of sits there. And same thing with ships. You have a container ship. These things are like 100 meters long, maybe longer. And you're broke. Like, you can't, like, you can't just throw it in the sea, right? And you don't have the tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. I have no idea what it costs to dismantle a ship. So there's some places in the world you just, oops, shipwreck, boop. And one of those places is Angola, or like Bangladesh, and there's a few spots. And so on this beach, there was like 30, 40 giant shipwrecks. And we went there, just going to show up and see what we can find. On Google Maps, it showed that there was still some wrecks, and we found one dirt path that went down there. So we got a local guy with a pickup truck, and he picked us up, and we drove down this road looking for these shipwrecks. We got there and we saw a bunch of guys with like these gun-shaped things on the beach. A lot of the wrecks were like cut up and gone and eroded, and we're like, it doesn't look like a really good time, because we're in the middle of nowhere, right? they speak Portuguese in Angola, which is a bit strange because they're in Africa, but it used to be a Portuguese colony. And neither one of us spoke really any Portuguese. And so having a conversation would have been difficult. So as we were driving along the road to go back, this like rickety little jeepy type tricycle thing came by with like a big cargo thing in the back, and it was filled with scrap metal and a bunch of guys. And so we have this really broken conversation between like Spanish and Portuguese and English. And they're explaining, oh, they're cutting up the ships and selling it in the black market. And we're like, can we go see it? And the guy's like, yeah, we have some friends down there, but they don't like cameras. So you can go, but just hide your camera. And so we went down, and I had like a little camera in my hand. And we had some little like Cuban cigarillos, like little cigarette shaped Cubans. And we gave all these guys these little cigars, and we became friends. And we ended up swimming out to these shipwrecks that were fucking rusty death traps, swimming through a labyrinth of scrap metal trying to get to these platforms. Turns out all the things that were guns were actually like homemade torches that they use. I think oxygen tanks and a homemade torch look like a rifle, and to cut the scrap metal off of the ships, and they sell it in the black market. And we got to go on the boat with the boys. They were like smoking weed and like drinking and cutting scrap metal, and they were so excited to see us, because it's like, why are there tourists in this skeleton? It's called like shipwreck beach in Angola, swimming out to this platform like a kilometer off. Anyway, just it was, but those moments are, bro, like for me, both me and my videographer, it goes down in our hearts, because again, it's such a perfect sentiment of how travel always is. You go there, you're a bit sketched out. Who are these guys? Do they have guns? I'm a little bit nervous here. You meet a few, everyone's just human. We're just stoked to see each other. We shoot the shit, smoke a bit on the platform, and then they, on their way back to the black market, they just drop us off in the ocean in their little shitty boat, and we have to swim like a half kilometer back to land. And it was like the perfect little travel memory, you know. And that's over and over again what I see in these places, these tourist unfriendly countries, right? Like Angola, Turkmenistan, Pakistan, all these places that people don't normally go. It's always the nicest people, man. Every single place I go.
And it sounds like you said, it sounds interesting, scary, all at the same time. And you, again, great segue. What I wanted to try to ask you was about, as far as all the traveling you do and all these different cultures and places, how's that impacted your own personal growth and even just your worldview?
I don't know, man. Before I started traveling, I always thought that the world was pretty black and white, where, you know, like deforestation was bad and people shouldn't do it. And then you go to like Madagascar and you meet these guys who are deforesting the forest, and it's just some guy who can't grow any food because the soil there, you can only get like 2 crops before it's depleted. So they got to cut down more forests, and they don't have contraception. So he's got like 6 kids and one's dying of famine. And it's like, oh my God, this is not exactly what I thought. Or in like Borneo, they have the palm oil, and it's like, how can you kill the orangutans? They're so incredible. Then you learn that we're the ones consuming all of the palm oil in the Western world, addicted to junk food, and how palm oil is really the most efficient oil you can grow on any square acre. Like, it's just the best in the world. So there's not really any other option to satisfy our junk food addiction. So really, if anyone's cutting down and killing the orangutans, it's us in the Western world. You realize, like, shit, like what in my own life do I not understand and assume is so black and white, right? So I have such an open mind, because I have to be. Pretty much anything I thought I knew, I didn't, or it's just so much more nuanced than that. And then you can go back and you can take that attitude towards relationships, towards your life, towards business, anything, man. Like, just being open to the fact you could be wrong, being open to the fact that there's another solution, or that there is some fact in every fiction, and fiction in every fact. Like, that attitude is very powerful, because then you start to realize there's not much to get too upset about. And travel also teaches you patience and resourcefulness. And if anything, that's been such a big tool in my toolkit. But at the same time, one thing I'm realizing now is I've lived a a life for the past 13 or whatever it has been years of like constant just whirring of the engine, right? Constant problem solving, constant new experiences. And now when I come back and chill, my mind still goes, and I have to figure out ways to just chill the fuck out. You know what I mean? Because life is always a problem to be, a puzzle to be solved. And I think that's really, as a human being, that's what we're built for. But if you give yourselves a 50 problems to solve a day, puzzles to solve a day, and you come back and sit in your apartment, you're like, your mind's just always trying to solve everything, right? So
yeah, well, how's that translate into, because obviously your content, right? When you talk about that, how do you that part, how do you do with creating your content and ensuring it's engaging? Because when you mention about the mind always going, I feel like I'm a little bit like that too. It feels like it just never stops sometimes. Sometimes I find that a problem because there's times where it's either not good enough or I'm always tweaking it or want to do more. How do you handle all that, Mike?
I think one of the best things I did in the beginning was learn how to do everything myself. And one of the hardest things that I've had to transfer into was someone who doesn't. Because in the beginning, if you're making content, you want to learn how to do everything. You want to know how to shoot and edit and host and travel and post and all this kind of stuff, and SEO and CTR and AVD and all this YouTube stuff. And in the beginning, I remember there was this badge of honor of people who were like, "Oh, do you edit your YouTube videos?" Yeah, I edit my own YouTube videos. And that was like something that I was proud of and other people were proud of. And I think that was the stupidest thing now. Stupidest thing. I mean, at the time, there's a place to learn how to edit for sure. And I think because I did learn, I mastered, or I feel like master's a tough word, but I've become a very good storyteller because over and over and over again, over 1,000 videos that I've edited, I've been able to craft travel documentaries in a sense, right? But with that, I clung too much onto everything, doing everything myself. And I had gotten really good at a lot of things over a decade on YouTube, right? And that went from, again, hosting. And the cool thing about this job as a content creator is that you can meander your way through a lot of different things. So in the beginning, it was just making little videos, never having my face on camera. Then I had my face on camera and it was super uncomfortable, but I made some progress. Then took my face off camera, did more like travel filmmaking, cinematic type stuff for tourism boards and brands. Then I got more in photography, and then I got back into putting my face in the camera. Then I got more into podcasting and then TV. And so it's been, the trajectory's kind of been like this, but at least it's all in one direction, as in authority and self-help and travel and adventure, right? But the biggest thing now is like realizing that that perfectionism is a disease, dude, and it's very easy to obsess and do everything perfectly, but you're always going to be eclipsed by people who just get it done, right? And there is a certain point where it's like momentum is probably one of the most important things a man can have. And if you get stuck up on every project because you want to make it perfect, aka you don't want to be judged because you can't handle being judged, because maybe you're a big phony after all and you suck and you don't want the world to know, so therefore you got to make everything perfect, you're just going to get eclipsed by people who have more speed, man. Like a man is like a bicycle. You have to have forward momentum to stay standing. Otherwise, you just rattle and fall over, and it's a big wreck, and you find yourself burnt out, depressed, anxious, pick it. Like we all have our own little concoction that we fall into. Addicted is a big one now too. So I would consider myself a recovering perfectionist. Would I change learning everything myself? No, but I wish someone would have slapped me 5 years ago and said, "You're being stupid. Hire more people, get more done." Only in the past 2 years, after a decade on YouTube, I've been able to launch in-person events. We had an awesome event called Tribal Rights, where I got to take all of the lessons, the rituals, some of the practices, and bring it all back into a week. So people don't need to travel the world for 10 years and go to Africa and Indonesia and everywhere. They can come and get my distilled advice and experience over 1 week here in Mexico, like an hour from Cancun. And that only became a thing because I freed up enough time to be able to think bigger. If you look at business, man, like Bezos isn't making his food or clipping his lawn, or like DiCaprio's not. Like, if you want to be a big deal, you got to give yourself time. And I would always struggle so much with fitness. Like, my fitness is an important thing to kind of clear my mind and get me going. But like, I wouldn't have enough time in the day, I would tell myself, mostly because I'm fucking emailing or all this bullshit that I didn't need to do, or fiddling on like audio fade handles on an edit because I wasn't happy how the song dude, I just so now I'm still working on that. I read a book called Who Not How, and if anybody's listening now who wants to learn a bit more about how to kind of take your life up to the next level, this book, it's Who Not How. If you're struggling or procrastinating on how to get something done, generally you're worrying about how. It's not how, it's always who. Like, who can you work with? Who can you find to do this for you, so you can keep the momentum and not get stuck in this world of inaction because you're not sure what to do.
Man, that was great answer, great advice. I mean, I look, for me right now, I think, I'm feeling some of that even as we speak, so timely and selfishly for me, I'm listening to what you're saying, and it's like, man, it really resonates and makes a lot of sense. I'm sure a lot of folks who watch this and listen to it are going to feel the same way. Yeah, really, really interesting. So how did you, being a perfectionist, and you say you're a recovering perfectionist, how do you eventually go, what's that moment though, Mike, where you're like, finally, like you feel like I broke away from that. Now I'm done. I'm moving away from it. I'm moving forward. What do you know when that happens, or was it difficult?
I think I just got sick of being slow. I think that I started to realize I had all these different patterns of being slow and thinking too much. And I noticed it in so many different things. Like, I started Muay Thai classes and like some jujitsu and things like that. So like martial arts. And in fact, you do sparring. And over again, I'd find myself being defensive and I'd have a good defense. I maybe go for like a counter, but I was never the one attacking, first off. And I would get beat by people who were always attacking because I would defend. And at a certain point, you can't defend everything. And I'd also play like chess, and I'd play against people who were always attacking, and then therefore you're always under threat and you can't ever move. And I kept on seeing all of these different examples in my life of like how I was playing small and defensive, and seeing all these other people who were winning, who weren't even necessarily good. Like, I knew I was better, like more technical, knew the things, but I was just waiting, man, for like the perfect chance to do the perfect, when I was just getting overwhelmed by people who were just doing. And that's, I think, a perfect metaphor for life, is that especially a creative, it's so easy to just get lost in this world of perfectionism and procrastination. And I think that self-image is something that we don't ever really think about too much. I think that a lot of artists could be introverted, a lot don't really have a vivid picture of who they are, or maybe it's an outdated picture of something that happened when they were younger, and they don't quite clearly see who they will become. But just like an anchor, right? Like, if your mind is set with who you used to be or the trauma you went through, you just always look backwards, right? But if you can start to switch that to focus on who you will become, which is less vivid in the beginning because you've obsessed and ruminated so much about who you've been or what's happened. If you can free yourself from that anchor and look forward, then you just start to get excited for what's next. And then failure doesn't even really matter, because what is failure anyway? Like, who has the audacity, who gives the permission slip for what a failure is? Like, who makes it official? Only you, right? Because again, like let's use public speaking as an example. You go up there and you could stutter your way through 3 minutes and piss your pants and pass out, right? And then the whole school or the whole group would laugh at you. But there's also a whole school and group who didn't go up to speak. You know what I mean? Like there's lots of people who are too scared to even think about it, but are very happy to judge others for making mistakes, right? So who's the success and who's the failure? The person who tried and failed, the person who didn't try at all. And embodying that attitude towards everything you do is a superpower, man, because then you can't fail. Not only if you start to realize only you have the power to discern success from failure. And while the world might decide something's a failure because you embarrassed yourself, again, that's your decision. You can own that and say, oh, I made a big mistake and oh my God, it's so embarrassing and I failed. Or you can be like, I got up there. This is the first step of 1,000 steps to be able to get where I know I'm going to be. Let's fucking go. Sign me up. Next time, maybe I won't piss my pants. You know what I mean? Like that attitude, I feel burns away perfectionism and procrastination. That and the realization that you can't do everything yourself. And if you find yourself procrastinating, it's probably because you don't really want to do it. And you have to decide whether that's fear, right? Or whether it's just because you're not excited about it anymore or at all. Like building a website, you know what I mean? Like, why would you want to torture yourself to do that when you can hire someone to do it? And if you're procrastinating building a website, is it because you're afraid of maybe people seeing your blog? Or is it more because you don't know how to start and it's going to take a lot of time and really you're not passionate about it? And understanding which one of those two it is really important. If it's fear, you got to head charge it. If it's just like, I don't know how to do it and I'm not excited to, then you can hire someone to get started. And once there's momentum, maybe it'll continue, man. But like those two things you have to be able to discern them. But you're like, if you really reflect on yourself, you know when you're acting out of fear, right? Like one common thing is I have a motto that's chase your fears. And one stupid question I get all of the time from people who think they're clever is, oh, how do you know which fears to chase? What if you run out into traffic? That's such like a fearful, coward, chicken-like answer. You exactly know which ones are safe and which ones aren't safe. Swimming, okay, yeah, swimming can be dangerous. Get yourself a coach. Have some common sense. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think I answered the question at this point. I'm just going keeping going, but you know what I mean.
Man, dude, you should I don't know if you have yet or you're going to, but you should write a goddamn book, man. You got some really, really good advice, man. It's really, really poignant shit, man. Listen, man, I want to have you on here to talk about, the adventure stuff is like so cool, right? But then starting to have this conversation, there's just so much more and so many layers, and it really, really comes across well.
That's how I get you, Charles. That's how I get you.
Man,
people click on the shit for the adventures, and I sneak in what's really going on in the world. in your head. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, you started to touch on a little bit. I got two more things here for you. You mentioned it a little bit about being motivated. What keeps you inspired and motivated? Obviously, you've accomplished a lot. What keeps you going?
It is, again, after I got that award last year, the Emmy for the best host, outstanding host. I don't know why I needed that permission. There's lots of people out there who just decide they are everything they need to be, and they just act and they move and they go and they decide they're an authority and they name a breathwork practice after themselves and they just talk like they're already on a podium. For me, I guess I felt like I needed some sort of permission, and like I've thought obsessively about this, man, and because the idea of fearless and far is not that I feel no fear. If anything, I felt more than most people. I would say I definitely have, honestly. But with that, I've been able to develop the tools and aggregate the information and experiences and find the best ways to think about it and approach it. And I just get excited because it's like I feel like I found this key to why the world's so fucked up and why we can't seem to get things together. And I didn't mean to. I just, from a very early age, realized there's more to the world than what I'm being told by mainstream media, by the scholastic system, all this kind of education system. And I want to find more. And along the way, I never would have thought I would have found a key to happiness, success, all these different things. You're the treasure cave that the dragon guards, man. And that dragon is the fear, the darkness, the shadow side. There's a million words for it, but basically it's there. And so now I get very, very excited when it comes to helping people with that. And again, travel is the reason why travel's kind of like it's called the Trojan horse to get people to think about this more, is because travel really puts you up against an edge. You could be a antisocial person. You go backpacking in Asia, you're going to find yourself having to be social, having to ask directions somewhere, having to open and crack open your shell a little bit. And then from there, you experience all these things that people think are, that you could think are weird or gross. But the local people think it's totally normal. Then you start to ask questions. Wait, if there's a billion people in India who say eating beef is wrong, and there's 400 million in the States that say it's right, like who's right or wrong? There's way more people saying that, so you start to question your thoughts and beliefs. And only from there, you can start to question yourself and be like, wait, why do I think this, right? Once you start to get unentrenched of who you are and how the world works, only then is it fertile soil to be able to start growing some seeds of growth and development in your life. So for me, being able to take all of these experiences, some which I do not recommend, but distilling the information and bringing it to people via this retreat that I do, the Tribal Rights Adventure Retreat. Very shortly, there will be a book, there will be an online course, all this kind of stuff. I just want to build a community and an identity around fighting the challenges in your life through travel, but also through asking questions, curiosity, and realizing that you can find the own answers to your life. And I think travel is the perfect vector, man, because you're only going to learn about the world from the world, right? Just like you're only going to learn about trees while walking through the forest, right? You can read books and that's cool, and you can learn the scientific names and all that kind of stuff. But you walk in the woods with like a Mayan hunter here, he knows how everything works, like the ants start walking to this tree, and when it starts to rain, you're not going to find that in the textbook. You might be able to know how the tree germinates, but he's going to be able to tell you like where the trees are. Like it's amazing. How time spent in the world teaches you so much about the world. And again, most people are afraid of the world because they haven't spent any time in it. And how can you be a creature of this big, beautiful blue marble and be so terrified of everything, of the snakes and the spiders and the tides and the moons and the trees and the beasts? Like, it's because all we do is watch horror stories and nature tales and UFO abductions and spirit hunters and all this kind of shit, right? We don't have an actual perception of what the world really is, and therefore we live in fear, because the antidote to fear is knowledge, and we don't have any knowledge, so fear festers, man, like the monster under the bed. If you don't look, if you don't know where to look, then it's just going to grow and grow and grow, and then you're afraid of the world, and no wonder you're afraid of what happens in your head. And anyway, getting to the point, I'm excited to help people understand the world and where they are and who they are, and travel is the perfect way to do that.
Man, you're doing a great job, man. Like I said, this turned into so many different layers that I don't mean this wrong. Just I wasn't expecting it, and I'm pumped. I'm super pumped the way of all this. So I'm glad you kind of said about this is probably a good way to end it. You talked about your mind is constantly going. So I kind of wanted to end with this. One of your videos I watched, you told a story when you were in the jungles of Mexico, and I'm probably going to botch this name, but you took 3 shots of ayahuasca.
Yeah.
Ayahuasca. So sounded like it took you on somewhat of almost like a psychedelic trip. So Mike, what I wanted to ask you, what if all your reality, what if it's that trip, it just hasn't ended yet? Do you want it to end? What have you learned?
Oh, fuck, dude. Don't scare me like that. It's Yeah, it's become quite popular, ayahuasca, recently, but it's a mix of plants from the Amazon, and one of those, or a few of those, contain DMT, and ayahuasca is this vine that makes it bioavailable. So basically, it's a DMT trip from plants, and you have enough, and it's you see God. And so I didn't really realize what I was getting myself into. Mr. Fearless and Far here, thinking he knows how the world works, and there's nothing more to be afraid of. I got roundhouse kicked by some divine entity that thought it was funny that I wanted to play in the realm of the gods, basically. Um, but dude, like, I have a biology background. I'm very analytical. I want proof. I like to see things with my own eyes. I want studies. But after playing around in that sandbox with like hallucinogenics and psychedelics and plant medicines and whatever you want to call it, like, there's a whole other world out there that I still can't. I don't know if it's always there or if it's painted on top once you take those things. But the more I fuddle around with that stuff, the more I think that this is all just like a facade for something so much greater. Like, but the problem is, like, what do you do with that information? Let's say this is the Matrix. Let's say that this is all just like a painting, and that there's a whole deeper level, and there's a fucking God above. It's like, cool. Just like in the Matrix, where it's like you take the blue pill, you take the red pill, and if you take the red pill, you have to live with understanding what everything is. That is a burden, bro. Like, blissful ignorance is sometimes a little bit better. However, would I choose another way? I don't know. But yeah, it's interesting. But one thing that's very beautiful about those things as well is you don't have to go that deep. And on that path, there's all sorts of interesting ways to see your life. And I would say some of my greatest realizations about the things I fear, the things that hold me back, um, the patterns, the relationships, some of the poison, the thoughts, that would not have ever revealed itself to me without dabbling in those things, because it takes you out of your body. And just like you were watching someone on the street give a speech about their life, you'd be like, oh, I think I know maybe why you do that. And oh shit, actually, especially when you start to analyze your childhood, you're like, oh shit, you got made fun of in school, or that happened to you. And then you start to realize, oh, now I do this. Oh my God, are those two connected? Yeah, you know? And then things get really interesting, right? But again, it's just like anything. I think like anxiety and depression and these things we deal with now are just undiagnosed fear. Like, no wonder you can't handle it, because you don't even know what's wrong. You have a feeling in your body that controls your life. You don't know why it's there. But with the right reflections, it doesn't even have to be with psychedelics. It can be just journaling and thinking, and maybe a little sip of rum and a cigar, or whatever you want to do, to something to kind of tweak the senses. One thing I've noticed all across the world is every culture has some way to just dial the dials differently. And then from there, you can think a bit more objectively about your life. And then from there, find some of the pieces to your own puzzle. Unfortunately, one of the biggest things about my career path is I can't show people the door. I can show people the door. I can't push them through. And my life and their life, or everyone's life, is so different. And they could be similar, but ultimately people have to come to their own realizations. Just like telling your boy, don't date that girl. She's crazy or something, right? And then he loves her, he'll date her, he'll learn the lesson, right? But human beings are terrible at taking advice. We like to just go in, fuck it all up, learn our lessons, and then the ones who are sane do learn and don't make the same mistake. And some people just make the same mistake forever. But you got to learn it yourself, you know.
So true, man. So true. And yeah, I wish I would have maybe taken that advice probably about just, learning my lessons and things like that earlier in life, but good spot now.
Dude,
and
some people never do. Some people never do.
Well, it's thanks to speaking to people like you, man. Honestly, I really, really appreciate this. So real quick, man, you mentioned it a little bit, but where can people find you? Anything you want people to be on the lookout for?
Yeah, so Fearless and Far is the brand everywhere. If you're interested in learning a bit more about what I do, or resonated with something that we spoke about today, we do tribal rights retreats, which is these 1 week, again, distilled experiences, knowledge. We did ayahuasca together actually a few months ago with my shaman here in Mexico. Also, there's like sweat lodges. There's all kinds of practices and lessons and things I've picked from around the world that we all come together. We do that. We're doing 2 more this fall. The dates will be released tomorrow actually, but they'll be end of September, early October. Generally about 20, 25 people there. We smashed it. The first one, sold it out. Everyone turned into like tribal warriors. We're all screaming with face paint and stuff. It was awesome, man. But really, I got to transform some lives, and really that's what makes me excited and keeps me going, is that seeing that I have learned enough, and I do have some sort of key to be able to get people unstuck, to be able to live the life of their dreams, bold, adventurous. And that just makes me super excited, because that's what I needed. I'm basically making what I needed 15, 20 years ago. And I'm stoked to see that the first 21 people who decided to trust me have had massive life changes.
I'm not surprised, man. I'm really not. Like I said, this has been enlightening for me, just this brief conversation. And it makes me really excited and interested in following you even more outside of this conversation. So thanks a lot, Mike. Really appreciate your time today. Thanks,
Charles. It was fun, man.
Yeah. Well, everyone, check out Mike. Check out everything he has going on. I think you'll be entertained by this. I know I was. So thanks everybody for listening and watching. Mike, you take care. Appreciate it.
This has been the Bare Essentials. Thanks for listening. And remember, never hibernate on your goals.